Greetings, Internet faithful. I'm some guy named Rob from On Your Marks Wrestling, and welcome to Rob Recaps Redemption, the Impact pay-per-view, the first ever Impact pay-per-view under the new regime from Anthem. This took place on April 22nd, 2018, and the recap is a little bit late because it's taken me forever to get a decent take in terms of audio and video, so you're going to have to bear with me. I'm really kind of at my wit's end. I've been trying since Monday morning to get a decent recap video for all of you here. So I'm kind of sitting in the quietest place that I can record right now because the background noise and background hiss on every take that I've done so far has been absolutely unbearable. So I thank you for your indulgence as I do this from what is essentially my car. I'm sitting in the driver's seat in a parking garage in downtown Ottawa. I'm a little bit early for work, so I figured, what the hell, I'm going to try this and see if it works and see if I can get a usable take out of this. So I have my notes here on my phone. If I'm looking away from the camera every now and then, it's just because, quite frankly, this pay-per-view happened 2 days ago. I don't remember everything off the top of my head. Some general impressions. I really enjoyed the fact that Don Callis was on commentary. I think he's a fantastic commentator. I'm a little surprised that they didn't go with the normal Impact Wrestling commentary crew and then added Don Callis to that. They instead went with Don Callis and Josh Matthews, which worked. It was workable. It didn't detract from the show at all. Another thing that I really liked was this looked like a wrestling crowd. Some of the TV tapings that they had back in January in the same location looked pretty rough. When they filmed from Orlando, it's especially like the last 2-3 weeks of TV, the TV tapings have been airing for Impact Wrestling. You always had sort of like just above like the rope level of the ring and sort of like that first elevated section, you had like an entire row of people in like these yellow or green shirts that looked like they got lost on the way to a taping of The Price is Right. So thankfully they kind of got away from that. They kind of got people into more appropriate attire for a wrestling show, which was nice to see because it looked a little bit sad with all of those, I half expected someone to yell out, "Come on down." We get into the first match of the night, which is Aerostar versus Drago. Great match to start off with. It was high energy, high tempo. The crowd was really into it. Lots of lucha chants. I think that the action was very well sustained. I know lucha matches can kind of lag at times because you start off with a really high octane and then guys get kind of tired and then they kind of slow it down and then they go back and then they slow it down a little bit. It's very roller coastery. This was a very nice steady paced match, which was appreciated. The only thing that I didn't particularly like about this match was the ending. The code breaker that ended the match looked very weak. It barely connected. The camera angle did not do any favors to this at all. So, yeah, it wasn't the greatest, but it was a great, other than the finish. If this had happened anywhere other than in the finish of the match, I think I would have glossed over it very, very easily. But the fact that it was the finish of the match kind of took away from it a little bit, in my opinion. But that's just me. We now get into promos setting up the tag team title match, the history of how Eli Drake picked Scott Steiner and how he won the briefcases. Scott Steiner coming out, introducing himself as the partner of Eli Drake. We have a promo with LAX wondering where the hell Conan is and, how they got to keep their heads in the game because they're defending their tag team titles. And that brings us to the tag team title match of LAX versus Eli Drake and Scott Steiner. I thought that this match was pretty good when Scott Steiner wasn't in the ring. Scott Steiner, unfortunately, he's gotten to the point in his career where he's too big and lumbering to get out of his own way. The top rope Frankensteiner, which I am renaming the Grandpa Steiner, looked like it hurt Steiner more than his opponent. The way that he landed that Frankensteiner looked like he legitimately broke his own neck and might have ended his own life right there in the ring just by completely snapping his neck in half. That's not a hallmark of a good offensive maneuver when it looks like you take more damage than your opponent. Long story short, you get Eli Drake hitting the gravy train After a referee distraction, you've got a 1-2-3. You've got new tag team champions. I'm a little bit surprised that they're hanging their hopes on Scott Steiner for the name recognition. I guess he's the biggest name that's out there that they could afford, who is a free agent, because all the other really big free agents are either going to Ring of Honor or New Japan, or they're, being snapped up and going back to WWE, going to NXT or what have you. So don't know if I would choose Scott Steiner as the guy to hitch my wagon to, because he can be very volatile, unpredictable, and he's not especially great in the ring anymore, but I guess he has name value, and I'm sure the guys at Anthem know what they're doing. Let's see. Next up, we have the 6-pack challenge of Ishimori versus Desmond Xavier versus Phantasma versus Brian Cage versus DJZ versus Trevor Lee. Again, I'll apologize for going to my notes as often as I am. Normally, I don't appear on camera for these types of recaps because I have so many notes. This was one of those matches where you pretty well knew who was going to win. It was just going to be a matter of how. They've been pushing Brian Cage as this unstoppable machine, and he was in this match as well. I like the new ring attire, the all-white attire, without sort of just the trunks, without sort of the singlet. I kind of like that look on him better than sort of the tank suit thing he was going for. It looked a lot better on him. The all white and his physique and everything, just like he looked absolutely spectacular, as he always does. That fat miserable bastard who's always out of shape, as I joked in my previous video. But yeah, I mean, he looked incredible. The main drama of the match was, when was he going to get in, because we fought under lucha rules, meaning that only 2 men in the ring at a time. But if anyone went to the floor, you could get somebody else can come into the ring and do their thing. Trevor Lee spent a lot of the time in the ring with DJZ, kind of punishing him. Hot tag to Brian Cage. Cage just basically, once he's in, he destroys everybody. It's kind of the last third of the match as he's just taking everybody out, taking out anything that moves. Spot of the night, as far as I'm concerned, was him hoisting a guy up on his shoulders for the fireman's carry, looking like he's going to hit an F5. Another guy jumps up off the top rope. Brian Cage catches him, then turns it into a double fall-away slam. I think that was fantastic. That was a great maneuver. What can I say? This guy's a beast. So yeah. Ultimately, Drill Claw takes it for the 3 count, and Brian Cage wins the 6-pack challenge. We then get a promo with Allie, who is looking for her redemption at this pay-per-view, because a lot of people think she's a paper champion, that she's just a pretty face that holds a title belt, that she's not a serious contender, that she's not a serious wrestler. But she is here. She is here to prove that she is the best at what she does. We start to go into the low point of the pay-per-view. Taya Valkyrie versus Kiera Hogan. This match was terrible. This match completely sucked. There was no chemistry. There was no flow, no continuity. It was just a series of things that happened in the match, and I think it was only made as an excuse to make the announcement that Tessa Blanchard was going to be joining Impact as part of the Knockouts division. And even then, Tessa Blanchard was a little bit rough on the mic at times. Her character was a little bit inconsistent. Is she going for the kind of spoiled princess thing that she's entitled to everything because she's a Blanchard? Or is it sort of that cocksure type of, hey, look at my credentials sort of thing? She kind of drifted between the two of them. I think she needs to go back and watch some tapes of her father when he was doing interviews, because Tully Blanchard was a lot better, a lot smoother on the mic. And could back it up in the ring. I think part of the problem is because we haven't seen her in the ring, it's a little bit more difficult to judge. You're just listening to things, and you kind of got to remember if you've seen her from places. She is very good. I think she'll be a great addition to Impact Wrestling. I know a lot of people were thinking that she was going to get snapped up by NXT or maybe even go straight to the main roster of WWE, but looks like it's going to be Impact for now. I don't even remember. I know Valkyrie won the match with the ride to Valhalla, but the match itself was terrible. This was the piss break match of the night. The next up was if you needed a food break as well, Matt Sydal versus Petey Williams for the X Division Championship. I wasn't a fan of this match at all. It did start off with a great tempo, a great pace. Things were very upbeat, and then they slowed everything way the hell down as Seidel focused on Williams' leg. P.D. Williams focusing on Matt Seidel's back, trying to neutralize each other's finishers. P.D. Williams went for the Canadian Destroyer way too many times in this match, which I guess I wouldn't mind if I didn't find it to be one of the most patently ridiculous finishing maneuvers in all of wrestling. I think it's just an incredibly... The whole conceit of it, to me, just strikes me as very dumb. The whole... It's a sunset flip into a pile driver, power bomb-ish type of thing. Nope. I don't buy it for a second. The first time I saw it, I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's dumb, but it's cool. It's a novelty move, but as a regular move, and especially something that you're going to go for about 25 times in a match, I just wasn't buying it. The whole match didn't click with me at all. Matt Seidel wins after performing a roll-up as P.D. Williams goes for his umpteenth Canadian Destroyer and retains his X Division title. This was basically a decent match it was the world's okayest finish. It was the okayest match on the card. I've seen a lot of really good X Division matches over the years. It was probably one of the things when I was able to catch Impact here and there that I was really kind of interested in seeing was the X Division. But this match really did nothing for me. We move into the House of Hardcore 6-man tag team match, although it's really more of a 6-man tornado match, with Tommy Dreamer, Eddie Edwards, and Moose versus OVE. That, of course, being Sami Callihan, Jake, and Dave Christ. House of Hardcore rules, meaning there are no rules. It's anything goes, false, I guess, count anywhere. I don't know if they really specified that, but I don't think they had to. It was a car crash, if ever there was a hardcore car crash to be had. Lots of ECW chants, lots of ECW references. It was overall fairly enjoyable as hardcore matches go, but the real story came after the end of the match. Dreamer gets rolled up by Sami Callihan. The heels win to get the heat, which they needed. And this is where Eddie Edwards basically loses his mind and snaps. He takes out Sami Callihan with the kendo stick and then duct tapes him to the ring ropes and then beats the ever-loving piss out of him with a kendo stick. And the ref tries to intervene. The ref gets beaten with a kendo stick. The Christ brothers come in. Each of them takes a kendo stick for their troubles, and the kendo stick is just splintering into pieces, and you can see chunks of it flying off. It was actually, from a visual standpoint, very cool. Tommy Dreamer tries to step in after more shots to Sami Callihan with this busted kendo stick. And this was kind of the weakest part of the aftermath of the match, where Tommy Dreamer just kind of gets gently pushed into the corner, and he just kind of sits there for a while, which I thought was a little bit too contrived. So you have Eddie Edwards is just going nuts, and he's swinging at anything that comes near him, and going back and beating the piss out of Sami Callihan. Out comes his wife, who tries to stop him, saying, "You got your pound of flesh. It's over. Let's move on." Of course, in the blind rage, he takes a swing around and knocks out his own wife. So Eddie Edwards is doing the "woe is me, what has I done" moment in the ring. And then they kind of took away from that a little bit when they had the medical personnel come out to the ring, and it was clearly people in costume. They were wearing like hospital scrubs. One of them was carrying a stethoscope. It was just really corny. And they're out and they're checking on Eddie Edwards' fallen wife, who is, by the way, dressed completely in white. So just in case the symbolism wasn't on the nose enough for you. Then I guess after about 3 or 4 minutes of them checking her out on the ring to make sure she's okay, on the apron, one of the officials goes, "Oh yeah, we got this guy who's still duct taped to the ring ropes, who's bleeding like a stuck pig. Maybe we should go take a look at him too," which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, this match was everything it needed to be. It told a great story. I'm interested in seeing where they go with this, because they are going to take this a little bit further, and should be kind of interesting to see what they come up with. Let's see. We get more promos for the main event, and then we get a recap of the Ali and Su Yung feud. Ali will, up next, is defending her championship against Su Yung, who has Braxton Sutter in her corner. This match told a much better story than it was a better story match than it was a wrestling match. Su Yung did her kind of creepy thing. Ali, was the plucky champion. It did what it needed to do. One of the things I found a little bit odd was about halfway through the match, Su Yung went for a running, jumping, leaping senton off of the ring apron to the floor onto Ali. And before doing so, she took off her tattered dress herself. She just kind of pulled it off over her head. This would have been something I would have expected Ali to do, to kind of like shred it off her in like a fit of like emotional frustration or duress or rage, or just sort of all this pent up anger that she's had with Su Yung and Braxton Sutter over the past few weeks, to just kind of like shred it off her and maybe try choking her with it before the referee takes it away from her and throws it out of the ring. But no, Su Yung just took it off on her own and then wrestled the rest of the match in her sport bra. Okay. Which was just kind of, it looked kind of out of place, especially since they didn't apply any makeup to the rest of her body like they do. Like there's a little bit on her leg and of course on her face. So it just looked a little bit out of place. But I mean, it's one of those things in retrospect where you think about it and you go, yeah, that was kind of weird, actually. So I wonder if they had something planned for that, and then the spot just got lost in translation. Braxton Sutter goes to distract the referee and distract Ali to try and gain the advantage. Ali knocks him off the ring apron. Su Yung does catch her and try to go for the panic switch for the win. Ali counters into a roll-up to retain her Knockouts championship, to get her, wait for it, redemption. And it was a match. It was pretty good. It was definitely far and away better than anything that you would have gotten from the Valkyrie Hogan match earlier on. But this match itself really wasn't all that fantastic either. It was kind of middle of the road WWE type of match. It just didn't have the same kind of oomph that a lot of the women's division matches have in the WWE. I think they still have a ways to go. But it was pretty good. It told a good story, and I guess that's the important part. Before we get to the main event, we get a promo, a fairly extended promo for Slammiversary coming this summer. I like this. This is the first pay-per-view under the new regime for Anthem. So the fact that they're already looking ahead and doing an announcement for an upcoming pay-per-view, I think is fantastic. I like that they're thinking big, that they're planning long-term. Obviously, the tapings that they did for TV leading into this pay-per-view were done all the way back in January. So clearly their writing staff is up to the task of creating something long-term for the wrestlers. And should be interesting to see where it goes from here, starting with this week's Impact Wrestling. We get to the main event, where it is Austin Aries versus Pentagon Jr. versus Phoenix for the Impact World Championship. This match was a great follow-up match to Lucha Underground versus Impact Wrestling match at WrestleCon. If you saw that on Twitch TV and you liked it, and you liked what you saw, if you saw the repeat of it this past Thursday on Impact, you probably were going to like this match as well. As a lot of the same stuff, just sort of repackaged and redone. The match is very athletic, lots of near falls, lots of counters, lots of high impact maneuvers, mix of the lucha, mix of a bit of power wrestling, some technical wrestling, submission wrestling. Ultimately, the one thing that fell a little bit flat for me was the sequence into the finish, where Pentagon does this sort of, it looks like he's going to put Austin Aries in a cross arm breaker, but instead just sort of yanks the arm back, and the announcers make a big deal of the cracking sound of Austin Aries' arm, as if his arm was meant to be broken by the maneuver, but they don't give a lot of time to sell it before Austin Aries is picked up and given the Pentagon driver by Pentagon Jr. to win the match and win the Impact World Championship. I think that having Pentagon win was a good move. It's going to create a lot of buzz. It's going to make for a good rematch. I wonder if they're going to carry this all the way in the Slammiversary, or if they're going to do it in another crossover event down the road. Should be interesting to see. But yeah, if you're going to go through all the trouble of that sort of arm breaker maneuver and have the announcers call attention to it, shouldn't you work on the arm just a little bit more to sell that? To me, it seemed like a bit of a wasted opportunity, especially if you're going to work with this going forward as part of the ongoing storyline of the match between these two competitors. But overall, I can't complain. Again, it's like the opening match of the night. 95% of the match was amazing. That last 5%, because it came right at the end, just kind of made me scratch my head in terms of the decision. Anyway, that is my Impact recap for Redemption. We got another one coming for Monday Night Raw. This is probably going to be a format I'm going to be following for the next little while, just because of circumstances beyond my control with how I got to record these videos this week, working at the office in downtown Ottawa. But until next time, take it easy.